What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. No Claudio Bellafato or Emerson Lazio holding it down today in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We're going to rock it together today, and we got a great one to do it for here. We're very excited. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and all those great places here. We got a fun one coming up today. Guest-wise, we'll take a look ahead at the NHL Stanley Cup Final that'll puck drop on Saturday. Shane O'Brien from the Missing Curfew guys here on DKN going to stop by for that one. An absolute beauty that we're looking forward to. And then hour number 2, we've got a Wilder Wednesday on a Tuesday on a Thursday this week. Charlotte is out in Boston. Her and Amin El-Hassa are going to be there as the NBA Finals, Dad, are set to get started tonight. That's a thing that's going to happen, and we are sure excited about that. We have wandered through the valley. We have navigated a landscape where we've had no championship-level sporting events, although shout out to the Oklahoma women's softball team yesterday, kickstarting the Women's College Series the way that they did against their rival Texas in a great 1-2 matchup there. But we were all set to finally go in this game. We previewed it every which way. We're going to do that with Charlotte in the second hour. And then Woj decided to do what Woj want to do pretty often, which is come in and bust up a lot of show lineups this morning as we are waking up to the news that Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN NBA insider, has dropped the bomb that the Los Angeles Lakers are targeting UConn men's basketball coach Dan Hurley as the franchise's next head coach and are preparing a massive long-term contract offer to bring the back-to-back national champion to the NBA, sources told ESPN. Now, Dad Woj went on to explain that the Lakers have had preliminary contact with Hurley and the sides are planning to escalate the discussions in the coming days. Hurley has been the front runner of the Lakers search from the beginning of the process, according to Woj, even while the organization has done its due diligence, including several other candidates, sources said. So, Dad, I guess shout out to Woj for letting us have our day in the sun yesterday with everything that went on with JJ because he just went out here and absolutely laid waste to it. So Dad, how surprised are you? Dan Hurley, a guy who after the season there was so much conversation about him, the Kentucky job when that opened up, and his desire to stay in UConn for all the reasons involving his wife, all the reasons involving where he's got that program to now. How surprising is this news to you?
It did catch me a little bit out of left field. I mean, we have been so J.J. Redick-centric, right, that the job was going to be his, the podcast with LeBron, the friendship with LeBron, his smarts, his IQ in basketball, that eventually he was going to be a coach. Talking to him yesterday, kind of putting it aside, which is normally what you do when the championship series of a sport is going on, or is about to go on. You don't want to be the headline. And J.J. Redick did not want to be the headline, said he'd talk about it after. Now he may have nothing to talk about after the series because he is calling the series for ESPN and ABC in this. So normally the league certainly doesn't want anything that takes away from what's about to start. And that's game one of the NBA Finals tonight. And Woj does what Woj does, drops the bomb right in the middle. Woj does one of those great movie scenes where he drops a bomb, turns around, walks away. He's walking toward the camera. The bomb goes off and he doesn't flinch, right? He just keeps walking because he knows exactly what he dropped. He knows when the bomb's going to go off, and it went off. So, yeah, this one caught me a little by surprise. I'm wondering how much it caught everybody else by surprise. Now, I'm just waiting to hear what the offer is because all you hear is massive as far as offer is concerned. He had just signed last year. Again, this is one of the issues we talk about, when players all of a sudden were getting paid and how bad it was, and now they can have freedom of movement and how bad it is. Dan Hurley won back-to-back national championships and last year signed a 6-year, $32 million extension, which obviously if he goes to the Lakers, he is just tearing up and moving on from. So, coaches can do it. He may do it. I can't wait to see what the offer is going to be. We know the top coach in the NBA, we're upwards in the area of the high teens, 20 mil. So you got to believe it's going to be in that area if they're calling it a massive deal. I know he's talked about in the past, coaching in the NBA when he was ready to do it. And maybe a certain amount of money and a certain team can make you more ready than you think you might be to say, yeah, you know what? I think I'm ready to go now. We'll see. But
I do think that part is interesting, Dad. You mentioned his relationship with the NBA because money's certainly a part of it. The Lakers franchise being one of the prestige franchises in the NBA is certainly a part of it here. And then the other part of it is the college aspect that we have going on right now. I thought this was interesting relative to what you just said. Danny Hurley was on Dan Patrick back in April and talked a bit about and was asked by Dan what it would take to get you to leave UConn. And his answer was kind of telling.
Maybe down the road, if I could grow up a little bit, mature a little bit with the emotions. Maybe the NBA, down the road. So
why do you want to do that why do you want to do that to yourself? Go to the NBA?
Well, I think college has become like the G League.
Good point.
In a way. I mean, it's that's obviously tongue in cheek, but a lot of the college game has changed. You win a national championship, and obviously we're going to do things, go to the White House, do these. We had the parade, you do these things, but you're basically right into free agency frenzy. So it's I'm more worried about burnout than I am going to the NBA.
And Dad, that part we talked about a lot about during college football this offseason, where you had a number of named college head coaches and college position coaches making the jump to the NFL, and people wondering if this was a direct result of some of the changes in the sport. And again, it's not to say that it's some rampant issue, but Danny Hurley, the coach who right now is on top of the men's college basketball world, did just look at you and say in that interview, yeah, it's different right now, man. It's nonstop. I believe in Woj's report, he referenced the nonstop grind. Yeah, here it was. The pursuit of Hurley. This is directly from Adrian Wojnarowski's article. The pursuit of Hurley comes on the 20th anniversary of the Lakers trying to hire then Duke head coach Mike Krzyzewski. He elected to remain with the Blue Devils, but the climate has drastically changed in college athletics. The demands of NIL fundraising for non-power football schools like UConn are an especially relentless grind and expected to become even more difficult. So, Dad, it's not to say that it's going to drive all these coaches away, but Danny Hurley's got options. He seems like someone that's revered and respected by almost everybody in basketball, and he's looking at this landscape going, all right, if this is something I was ever interested in, now could be a pretty great time to jump for that, among other reasons.
Listen, he's got his college, UConn, to the top of the mountain 2 years in a row. So he's the man there. But you step into this job, and the spotlight burns 1,000 times more, right? But it almost seems like you're right. These guys make this move that college coaching has become difficult. And I'm not saying this in any way where I feel sorry for the coaches, because they get paid handsomely for it. Players are finally getting some due for helping the colleges and the coaches earn all this money. So I don't feel sorry for the coaches, but there's no doubt their job has gotten harder and more intricate to do. So, if you are one of the ones that has options and choices like Danny Hurley may have, then you can get out of that if you want to. You can get out of that. He's been coaching. His first college basketball coaching was, I think, 97. He was assistant at Rutgers. So basically, he's been at 27 years. I think that's about right. 27 years in college coaching. So he's seen the turn. He's not one of these newbie coaches. He's seen the turn and where it's going and what he's trying to hang on to. And he's hit, as I said, hit the mountaintop a couple of times already. So, hey, next challenge, the deal the Lakers put together will make the 5 or 6 years for $32 million seem laughable for the money that he'll get paid. But the spotlight will be intense. There's no doubt about it. And the Lakers, this is also something, I believe the Lakers doing this for a move as well, a beyond LeBron move, right? You're not hiring it. And even for JJ Redick, well, that was more because thought they were friends, and that might be a good way for LeBron to stay there for the last couple of years. Hiring Danny Hurley is like, okay, he's taking the Lakers into the post-LeBron times. Right? I mean, that's what they're basically setting up for. They want to win it with LeBron, and we'll see where that goes as far as Bronny is concerned and all that. But you're signing Danny Hurley to a long-term deal to take you into the next level after LeBron.
Well, I mean, part of this is also leverage, right? Like even the stuff about Danny Hurley and the relentless grind, I'm sure that's stuff from Danny Hurley's camp to make it so that everyone involved is inclined to give him even more money. Like if he were to somehow wind up staying at UConn, I'm sure it would come with an incredible pay raise. But Dad, I think the other part of this from the Lakers side, because I heard it was Brian Windhorst went on Sportsmanlike this morning with Canty and Michelle Smallman and Evan Cohen, and said that. And like to an extent I get that, but like JJ Redick's also young. If it had gone well, he could have been there beyond the life of this. I'm sure Danny Hurley being signed by the Lakers, and I know LeBron has said publicly, and the quote from Wendy was, LeBron told the Lakers, you need to make the best coaching decision for you, not necessarily. LeBron's still having a say-so or put his stamp of approval on whoever they were going to hire. So I think ultimately that's something that this to me is more, you're getting a more ready-made product now with Danny Hurley than you were. With JJ Redick, it would have been betting on upside and doing all that. This, I mean, you're talking about someone who's one of the name brand coaches in the sport. And Dad, from the risk-reward side for Danny Hurley, too, this is the might makes right side of things because there's no way for him to lose in here. This is a lot like when Sean McVay flirted with the idea of retirement a couple of off seasons ago and talked about maybe going to do TV. Because you knew on the other side of that, any job, any school, any program would chew their right arm off to hire Danny Hurley if all of a sudden it didn't work out with the Lakers and he was back on the market at the college level. So he wouldn't have to worry about job security ever. And it's an easy risk for him to take at one of the name franchises with a couple of all-time great players already on your roster to try and make into something after a couple of year hiatus from winning. I mean, the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago. So I guess I shouldn't say it was that far in the rear view mirror, but it's a pretty darn good opportunity for a coach if you're looking to make that jump.
And you always, I even heard in that interview with Dan Patrick, Dan was saying, why the NBA? Why would you want to go to the NBA? Listen, just like we as players want to make it to the professional ranks, coaches, there's a lot of coaches. Some are fine with being in college, and that's great. Others want to coach at the highest level. The highest level is the NBA. Yeah. They want to test themselves at the highest level. So that's a reason you go, even though you know you're going into the NBA to get hired, to get fired at some point, because you can have that decades-long career in college, coaching at a certain college. But in the NBA, it normally doesn't happen, or it's a rarity. But you want to test yourself. You have the confidence that you can be successful there. But there is a domino effect here. You have to understand, this is a two-time defending champ. If he signs with the Lakers, every player on UConn has a 30-day window to transfer. Yep. That team could get, and I'm not going to lie, I don't know what's left from the team, from the two-time champ team. That I do not know, but I do know that every one of them can transfer out of there within 30 days if Danny Hurley takes that job with the Lakers.
I think if I'm looking right here, all right, so I just pulled up the way too early top 25 for ESPN.com next year, and they have UConn as the preseason number 3 right now. So this is still expected to be a top 5 team in basketball going into next season. And so, Dad, you're absolutely right. That's a treasure trove of prospects that could all of a sudden be shooting out into other schools and going on to the road, and also a job in UConn, where you look at the last few head coaches and we talked about it, their national championship run to turning into one of the blue bloods of the sport in the 21st century has been across the span of 3 coaches. So now the potential to be another coach coming into that infrastructure that, albeit difficult as it's being framed here, to maybe compete with some of the NIL stuff of other schools, they've managed to do it. Like, they're not sitting atop the sport now. If they're not highly competitive in that field, part of that can certainly be the appeal of a coach that's as well respected as Danny Hurley. But there's also going to be things in place that we've seen across multiple coaching staffs now that would make that job an enticing one for someone out there. So you're right, Dad. To unseat it like that this late, it feels like, in the process, would be chaos on the college basketball side as well. So again, according to Woj, which, by the way, the other subplot of this I love, little Woj versus Shams action right now, because it is directly, they have both chosen their champion. And so you've got Shams holding up J.J. Redick on one side, which, based on J.J. Redick's cryptic call out to Shams on our show yesterday, I am very fascinated with what that's going to look like now. I mean, Dad, if Danny Hurley, who is the Woj champion in this, and who would get him the win in this entire altercation, if Danny Hurley ends up getting this job, the first Old Man in the 3 podcast post NBA Finals after this news is going to be announced. Going to be fascinating to see how much we would get in window into the process from JJ Redick on this front, who I'm sure could still want to coach, and had the interview I think with the Charlotte Hornets earlier this offseason. But this would certainly make for some very, very interesting podcast fodder here. Dad, ultimately, this seems like something that would be a great move for the Lakers. Obviously, there was so much talk about upside with J.J. Redick and the relationship with LeBron as the sell, but you're going to see the LeBron James tweet making the rounds today of when Danny Hurley was on with J.J. Redick on Old Man in the 3 talking about offense, and LeBron himself commented and said he's so damn good along with his staff, super creative with their offense, love it. Danny Hurley is an incredibly respected basketball mind. He's a little bit of a wild dude. We've seen him right on the court chirping Zack during the finals game, and giving a lot of great quotes in the lead up there. He's a character that would be coming to Los Angeles. But ultimately, the offense that we did watch at UConn, Dad, looked a lot closer to NBA action than it did to the usual overcoached college basketball stuff. So this would be a huge win, I feel like, for the Lakers relative to a lot of the candidates out there.
And it's interesting. I was listening to Brian Windhorst this morning as well, saying, when was asked about, well, what about the J.J. Redick thing? He said, well, J.J. Redick could still be pursued for a different job than coaching by the Lakers. He said, we don't know. And the other thing is, we don't know. Woj could be exactly right, which he normally is, that Hurley's the leading candidate, but he may not take the job. I mean, he still has to take the job. Now, it would all seem like he was going to take the job, right? I mean, from a financial standpoint, how much, and as I've always talked about, everything is different to everybody. What's important to Dan Hurley right now? Is it to move on to the NBA? Is it to secure the bag? Everything is timing in life. his timing may not be any better to get a bigger bag than right now, because he wouldn't get this kind of bag, even sought after in college. He wouldn't get the type of bag he can get from the Lakers. So this would probably be his chance to grab the biggest contract, and unless he was ungodly successful and rolled it into another one. But right now, the biggest contract that he's going to get to secure, family and families and generations of their future. And that's important to people, and that's fine.
No, 100%. I was just going to say on the family front, Dad, remember all the conversation coming off the season about his wife, and Andrea, who he said didn't want to leave New Jersey, and he already had to coax her out of there to get her over to UConn. I wonder what the sell in the Hurley house is looking like for the trip to Los Angeles right now.
You can fly back and forth however long you want. I'll get you a home in Jersey. We'll have a home in LA. We'll have a home wherever you want. We'll have homes everywhere. I mean, the sell, they say money doesn't buy happiness, but it can buy a lot of things that might lead to happiness to keep the your better half happy if she truly didn't like LA or didn't want to go to LA, because that is part of it. Listen, we've heard the stories of Urban Meyer with his wife didn't want to go to certain places that they weren't going, and that's real, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's got to be, there's family involved, there's spouses, there's kids involved in these decisions, so a lot has to go into it. So let me tell you, if you can try and make your spouse happy in any other way, and it costs money to do it, and you now have the money to do it, damn good on you.
Yeah, no, this is a real coming to America. When I say the boy's got his own money, I mean he has got his own money, and that could potentially be the case here. Is again, Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Danny Hurley has emerged as the front runner for the Los Angeles Lakers job. This just a day after we had heard the report from Shams that JJ Redick, who joined us on the show yesterday, was also the one they were zeroing in for that job, and so now we get to wait because, oh, by the way, there is a game in the most important series in the NBA calendar that's getting started tonight, where JJ Redick will be a part of the call for ESPN along with Doris Burke and Mike Breen. And so we have all of that hanging in the balance. And oh, by the way, coming up next, we're also going to talk about Kristaps Porzingis and how ready he is to actually go help the Celtics basketball team try and win this series next. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. While we wait to see the Lakers put the full court press on Danny Hurley to try and get him from stores to Los Angeles, we got some basketball finally getting started tonight. And one big bit of news that everyone in Boston especially is going to be excited about came from Kristaps Porzingis yesterday, who had been the most talked about man in the lead up to this entire ordeal, who came out and did not mince words about his status heading into game one tonight. Here was Kristaps yesterday.
Just to be clear, are you saying that tomorrow you guys will decide based on you going hard whether you're going to play or not Thursday?
No, I'll play tomorrow.
You will play?
I will play tomorrow. I've came back from multiple injuries. I've had these first games back. Of course, not at this stage, but at the end, it's just basketball. Of course, the intensity is a little bit higher, but I have to go out there and play like it's a basketball game and an important basketball game, and that's it. I don't need to think too much or just overthink out there. Just go out there and hope.
Well, Dad, there we go. We got the answer from him. No hemming or hawing. I'm playing tonight. Kristaps is going to be out there. And, Dad, we know how huge this is, right? You've talked about the rim runners that the Dallas Mavericks have in the middle of their offense there with Daniel Gafford and Derek Likely, who are now going to have one of the best rim protectors statistically in the NBA this season back in the lineup. And, Dad, you know this about injured players. I would imagine Dallas is going to test him early. Let's see how well that calf works when you've got these big bodies all flying at you in the paint trying to put one on your head.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, because as you mentioned, with Lively and Gafford, they can attack the rim. So, what does that do for Porzingis by the rim? Is it early foul trouble? Do you try and wear him down? Because he has not been able to practice at full tilt of how a game is going to go. You never can. It's not like it's, singular to basketball. You just can't. So a couple of things I'm looking for is we're not going to sit here and talk about a minute restriction, but they're going to have to go by how he looks cardiovascularly, right? Is he tired on the court? Does he get into foul trouble if they attack him? How successful can he be pulling away those bigs away from the rim and switches he caught out with Luka? That'll be the fun thing, out high in the three-point land where Luka loves to drop bombs out there. And then one of the most important things to me, Mike, is going to be tomorrow. How he feels tomorrow. Depending on how much he plays, how it feels, this will be the first time he's gone absolute full tilt and then it's always that next day. How does it feel the next day? What do you need the next day? Do you still need rehab the next day? Or is it just a little bit of soreness and you're working through it? So those are the things I look for when you're coming back that first game from injury, is how long you can go and then what you feel like the next day.
Yeah, it's massive. The recovery in between for a series sport. That's the biggest difference between our sport and hockey and basketball is you've got to account for not just getting up for one game to try and make this happen and then you got 7 days in between. It is that grind of trying to figure out how you stagger this and coach through this for the entire series. So that's going to be a big challenge for Joe Mazzulla and company, no doubt about it. And, Dad, you have talked a lot about the lobs from the Dallas Mavericks. I saw this stat posted the other day by YRB311 on Twitter. Alley-oop dunks by teams in the playoffs this season. The Mavs lead the way with 54. You want to know how many the next closest team has?
I'm going to say 20-something.
The Denver Nuggets had 9. That's the next closest team in the playoffs. That is how this is full-blown Lob City Clippers era basketball that we're getting from the Dallas Mavericks right now. And we saw this in the Indiana Pacers series with the Boston Celtics, plain as day that without Kristaps in there, they were open for business, right? Everybody was going inside and trying to get theirs in there, but the Celtics were so prolific from the outside that that's still something they have to consider. JJ Redick talked about it yesterday for the Celtics, defensively and offensively, being able to pull some of those bigs out of the paint, change the matchup issues because Kristaps is so prolific from the outside. So that the biggest factor, as everyone has said going into this game, is what's it going to look like with Kristaps Porzingis? And we'll learn so much about it in game one. We'll learn even more about it in the days after that, as you pointed out here, Dad. And then we'll look to everything else here. And I think outside of Kristaps as the premier headline in this, the other thing is honestly probably, and I guess I'd ask you this, Dad, what do you think the other biggest headline is this game? Is it the potential for Luka to get over the hump as one of the greatest players in the NBA right now? Certainly looked at as the best player in this series. And a lot of people have argued, as we'll get ready to make our picks today, that the team with the best superstar player is usually the one that wills out in these kinds of situations here. Is it that, or is it the chance for Boston's backcourt and really dynamic duo of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to finally coronate what's been an incredible start to their NBA careers that just hasn't had the hardware yet?
Well, those guys have been joined at the hip, but I still wonder if Brown ends up being the better player in this series and they win and somehow he wins the MVP. Does the narrative shift on this team? But for Boston, it would be closing out, finally meeting your expectations. But for me, I look at I guess that would be the immediate. The further is, listen, the best player on the court's Luka, right? Luka's the best player. Of the 4 stars, 2 for Boston, 2 for Dallas, Luka's the best player. So that's what we start doing. We start counting rings, because we certainly count the guys who are some of the greatest of all time that don't have rings. And Barkley has to deal with that every single time the conversation comes up. So you start to do that. So you start to put rings, with players, and that elevates them all time, right? Whether you think that's the right way to do it or not, that's what's done. You count rings. So I think for the micro, it's certainly more about Boston, I think, getting over the hump. For the macro, I think it's Luka in where this starts to go with his legacy to start counting rings.
Yeah, I think Luka does seem like he's on that kind of trajectory individually, where you're right. Brown and Tatum have always been mentioned in tandem. It is interesting, like Jason Tatum is definitely the second best player in this series, but man, the way everyone's talking about Kyrie Irving in the lead up to this week, Dad, where we didn't even get to it with JJ Redick the other day, but on the Mind the Game podcast with him and LeBron James called Kyrie Irving the most gifted player in NBA history in terms of the physical gifts of his game, what he can do as a creative finisher, the way he uses his left hand. I think JJ referred to him as the most aesthetically pleasing player in basketball history, and that I would definitely co-sign. Kyrie Irving's game is beautiful. But in this series, Dad, is he the third best player? Is it him? Is it Jaylen Brown? How do you stagger those ones? Because I think that's kind of an interesting way to always look at a series is if you're ranking the best players in every series, how many from each team would be included in that top 5, top 6 group?
Well, I think you split those 2, right? The 2 for each team. But do we think Brown has been playing better than Tatum at this point? But it's still hard for anybody to put Brown ahead of Tatum. So that to me has been an interesting thing. Luka's definitely number 1. And then is it Brown or is it Tatum that's number 2? Are they 2 and 3, and is Kyrie 4 or is Kyrie 3? We see Kyrie. I mean, they're both these tandems are averaging basically 51 points a game. It's amazing how that's happened. So I think we're at the point, though, at least with the top 4. Luka's on top. Maybe the next 3 we're splitting hairs a little bit on, and we'll see who separates themselves. One of the other things I think Luka is playing, and it's not banking on this year, but if you can start stacking rings, Luka has a chance to go down as the greatest European player ever to play in the NBA, right? Because you're talking about Dirk, you're talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo, you have to put him in there. Paul Gasol, Sabonis. You start looking at some of the great European players. And remember that Luka's been on the stage since 15 years old, playing pro ball in Europe. So, I mean, he's got a good chance to go down, the way he's playing as the greatest European player ever to play in the NBA.
It's a long way off in the distance, but given his game and, again, style of play, I saw a whole SportsCenter special that Justin Tinsley wrote yesterday about the sneer, that sinister smile of Luka Doncic, and he's got all of that killer instinct that, again, we love, especially in this league. So we'll get more into this series when Charlotte Wilder joins us in hour number 2. But coming up next, we got the NBA Finals that tip off tonight, and we've got the NHL Stanley Cup Finals that get started on Saturday. So coming up next, Shane O'Brien from Missing Curfew going to join us to break down exactly what we expect as Canada tries to take back the cup once and for all. puck drops in the Stanley Cup final this Saturday. And for more on that, we're pumped to bring in another one of the voices you can hear around here at the DraftKings Network, former NHL veteran and co-host of Missing Curfew, Shane O'Brien, joining us now here. Obi, how you doing, man? We appreciate your time.
Oh, fellas, I appreciate you having me on. It's a great to be part of the DK family, and I'm a fan of what you boys do. So it's an honor to be here. Exciting time for hockey, the Stanley Cup final. So I'm looking forward to breaking it down with you boys.
No, definitely. We appreciate it. And this is a big one. I know for you, you're from Canada. We got the Oilers, we got the Florida Panthers, but this is really, for so many people, I think, about that Canadian drought with the Stanley Cup. We know it's been over 30 years here. And I'm curious, like, if it turns into that national bit of unity when you do get one team that makes its way in here. Is everyone rallied around the cause right now?
You know what? That's a good question. Me as a guy that's been out of the country for a long time now, living down here, this is home for me now. But, I grew up a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and, I love the Edmonton Oilers for Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, but I know all my Leaf buddies back home aren't exactly pulling for the Oilers. I know my Canucks fans, I played for the Canucks for a couple of years. I know they're not pulling for the Oilers. There's been some rumors that some Ottawa Senators fans are cheering for them, but I think deep down, if you asked every Canadian, we're ready for the drought to be over. It would be nice to see the cup come home.
Let's dig into Edmonton, though, because obviously their season fascinating. They start off 2-9-1. They fire their coach and have to make all these changes. How were they able to turn it around between then and now to get to the point where they've got a very realistic shot at taking this thing home?
Yeah, it's a great question. And at one point, when they fired Jay Woodcroft on DraftKings, they were plus 1,800 to win the Stanley Cup. And, I talked to the Updog this week on Missing Curfew. And at that point, we thought, man, I don't even want to put a little bit of a future bet on this team because they were in shambles. They couldn't defend. Their goalie couldn't stop anything. McDavid was hurt. It didn't look promising. They were, I think in 31st place in the league. And you got to give Chris Knobloch a ton of credit. Draisaitl, McDavid, everyone has bought in. And the word you hear a lot in hockey and sports, as you boys know, is adversity. And when you go through that adversity early on in the season and you climb your way out of it with a 16-game winning streak and you fight right to the end to almost win the Pacific Division, then you get down 3-2 to Vancouver heading home, elimination game in Game 6 and win Game 7 on the road. They've just been through a lot of off-ice distractions this year, and they stuck together, and I think that has been their biggest feather in their cap. And they finally learned how to play defense and check, and their penalty kill has been unbelievable.
We talk about some of the greats in their sport, and we always attach how many rings did you win with it, as that's part of now your legacy and how well you will be remembered. Connor McDavid, I feel like we've known since he was 12 years old. He's 27, been in the league since 2015, and that is as that first pick overall. What will it do for him and that legacy to be able to lift Lord Stanley's Cup here?
Yeah, you always hear about championships, right? My boy, poor Charles Barkley, always takes it on the chin when Shaq and the boys give it to him about not winning. And, for Connor McDavid, it's just a matter of time. I mean, listen, they're 4 wins away right now. This is the best Oilers team they've ever had, the deepest. Like I said, the way they've learned how to finally check and defend and protect the house and their penalty kill. It's just a matter of time before him and Leon Draisaitl get one. But for him, it's just the final kind of thing for him to be like, listen, you finally did it. You've got your Hart trophies. You got your Art Rosses. You're the best player in the planet, hands down. Everybody agrees on that. But like you boys know, it's all about winning championships. And if Connor can get this done and get it across the finish line, it's just a feather in his cap and the final icing on the cake, I guess.
What is it about this Panthers team? They got to this stage last year. They end up getting beat in that series. What did they learn from that? Why do you think they're better for it this year?
Yeah, I think that's at the top of the list, right? You get back to the Stanley Cup, you get to the Stanley Cup final, and you lose to a Vegas team in 5. And for me, Florida got through the first 2 months. When Chucky was playing, but he was hurt. Ekblad was hurt. Montour was hurt. They got through those 2 months and hung in there, and then they just found their stride. And to me, they can roll 4 lines. They got a great six defenseman. Bobrovsky's unbelievable in net, and then it starts with their head coach, Paul Maurice. I mean, in our business, he's a content guru. He's just giving us clips every week that are unbelievable, but you can see how much they care. They got the family, feeling in that dressing room, and they're hungry. And by the way, their captain Barkov is an absolute beast. He won the Selke for best defensive forward again. His 200-foot game is unbelievable. To me, they just have more depth. They can play it any way you want to. And I just think they're so hungry that they're going to find a way to get it done.
So give me a little bit on Matthew Tkachuk. His dad started playing right at the end of my career in the NFL. He was with Winnipeg before they came to Phoenix, and I watched him there. And now his kid, that emotional leader for the Panthers and what he brings to the ice.
Yeah, Big Walt's a beauty. I've got to know the Tkachuk family's been really well to me since I've started this Mr. Curfew podcast. Chucky comes on all the time. Brady, Big Walt's been on. You could just tell that Maddie and Brady grew up around NHL locker rooms. You know, the way they treat their teammates, the way they treat their trainers, the way they're just respectful of the game. You can tell that they grew up around, I think Walt Tkachuk should be a Hall of Famer, around a guy that, should be in the Hall of Fame, was an all-star, was a guy's guy. So, and Chucky, the way he plays the game, I always told him I'd played against him, I'd want to kill him, but I'd love to have him on my team. And you can see that's what he's doing right now. He'll take any role that Paul Maurice wants to give him. He'll play on any line. He'll do whatever it takes to win this Stanley Cup. And he's the emotional leader in that dressing room and just a great kid.
What about the goaltending in this series? We obviously always point to that when we get to the postseason here. Skinner coming off a game where he had to hold it down while the Oilers only got 10 shots off in the entire game to close this thing out. Who do you think's got the edge in this?
Yeah, and I go to the Edmonton Oilers coaching staff again, Chris Knobloch. You got to give him credit. In the Vancouver Canucks series, he could have kept Skinner in the net and try to let him play through it. He said, listen, take a couple days off, work with the goalie coach, and you boys know, get mentally back to where you need to be. He was obviously mentally, he was emotional after one game. He didn't want to talk to the media because he was so upset. So he found his game. He played unbelievable in the Dallas series. He outplayed Ottinger, which if you would have told me before the game, I would have bet you anything that Ottinger would have been a better goaltender. However, the Florida Panthers just put on an absolute clinic against Igor Shesterkin in New York. If it wasn't for Igor, that would have been a sweep in my opinion. So they're going to have they're going to have a lot more quality scoring chances is what I'm saying here. So we'll see what Skinner can do. And then Bobrovsky on the other end, he's just dialed in. He's tracking pucks. His rebound control is unbelievable. He's been to the Stanley Cup final, and he's ready to rock, in my opinion.
Real quickly, we always like to put a bow on the teams that aren't there, and especially a player. Joe Pavelski, 18 years, knocked out by Edmonton when he was with Dallas, spent most of his years with San Jose, said he's done, hasn't said he's retiring, but said he's not coming back next year. How do you encapsulate his career?
Yeah, just legendary, just class. I think if you talk to people that played with Joe Pavelski or against them, I think class would be the word that comes to mind. And I played against Joe when he was in San Jose, and he's not the biggest guy, and he's not the fastest guy, and he's not the strongest guy. And, you think, I can handle Pavelski. And then you look at the score sheet at the end of the night, he's like, oh, he had 1 goal, 2 assists. It was +3. You're like, he's just such a smart player. His craft, he would, you always see him after practice, tipping pucks. There was nobody better in the league at going to the front net and tipping pucks. And, there's always guys you're pulling for as ex-players. I'm sitting here talking to you boys, never winning a Stanley Cup. And Joe Pavelski was one of the guys I was rooting for if Dallas did get it done. Unbelievable player. He's an unbelievable golfer, so I'm sure we'll see him on some of these celebrity tours here in the near future. But just a class act, and it's too bad he didn't get that Stanley Cup.
Last one for you. You mentioned not winning the cup, and the superstition around sports always funny to me. We had both teams that made it to the Stanley Cup, both elect to not touch their various conference trophies in this one, whether it's the Prince of Wales or the Campbell. Where were you on that, the superstition and not touching the trophy on the way to the big one in Lord Stanley's Cup?
Yeah, it's a great question. Everyone wonders it, right? And Wayne Gretzky, the greatest player in the world, and such a great guy. Gretz is like, when we won it, we just picked that thing up and partied with it. And I'm like, I think that's because Gretz knew. I think that's because Gretz knew they were going to win in the final, right? Gretz is like, no one's slowing me down. But me personally, I got to the second round three years in a row, and then after that, I didn't get back. But I would have been one of the guys that don't touch it, boys. Leave that alone. We have unfinished business. We need 4 more wins. I just think it's such a great look. You saw both teams, Florida and Edmonton, come in, put all the boys around it, take your picture with it, don't touch it, and you just leave it there because you got your eye on the bigger prize. So for me, I was superstitious. I would have been like, fellas, nobody touch that thing. We'll touch it after we win the bigger one.
I'm totally with you on that. I'm the same thing. I'm not going to be the guy to even come close to messing with that. Yeah. So great minds think alike there. But everyone vying for the big one coming up this weekend. Saturday, Oilers and Panthers, puck drops there, and we'll all be looking forward to it. Everyone make sure you check out Shane and the guys over at Missing Curfew. It's awesome stuff, and we're looking forward to hearing from you guys and watching all this great action during the Stanley Cup final, man. We appreciate it. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Thanks to Shane O'Brien for joining us from Missing Curfew. We'll talk to our buddy Charlotte Wilder coming up in about 15 minutes here as we get ready for the NBA Finals and continue reacting to the Adrian Wojnarowski report that UConn head coach Danny Hurley has now become the frontrunner for the Lakers head coaching job. But, Dad, in the meantime, the Dallas Cowboys were talking yesterday, so you know we all got to come running right now. The Cowboys head into the 2024 NFL season as one of the most perplexing teams in the NFL, largely due to their front office and the way they've handled the contract of their quarterback, Rayne Dakota Prescott. Here was Dak yesterday talking to the media about betting on himself and this team.
This is the urgency you should always have, to be honest. So maybe guys who normally wouldn't feel it. So I don't mind it. Been in this position before. I'm a gambling man. We'll gamble on myself and my guys. So not actually, guys. I understand. I understand there's been a lot of shit with that. So.
Every player going for easy laughs right now as guys are getting banned for life in leagues left and right. But Dad, Dak Prescott, asked about the sense of urgency that comes with, in his case, being in the final year of the 4-year, $160 million deal that he had signed. There is reports and conversation about Zack Martin, one of the all-time greats on that team, maybe thinking about at least contemplating retirement after this season. We know the guys they've already lost on that roster. And so, Dad, is there a team under more pressure going into 2024 than the Dallas Cowboys right now?
Well, I mean, Jerry Jones is kind of putting the pressure on himself, right? By basically, if he doesn't do anything with Dak, making this be the last year. Dak Prescott is in the catbird seat. Dak can't be franchise tagged and Dak can't be traded unless he agrees to a trade. So they either have to extend him or he becomes a true free agent at the end of the year. A quarterback of this ability, and we've seen him play to MVP caliber. We've seen him get hurt. We've seen him throw interceptions, and we've seen him play great. What we haven't seen him do is lead a team, and he's not the only player on the team, but he's the most important position. Haven't led this team back to the Super Bowl in a hell of a lot of years. So I'm not sure what the thought process is with Jerry Jones. Because, again, the question always is, okay, if not him, who? Who are you getting? Who's going to lead this team? Because it's not like Jerry Jones ever wants to be in a position of rebuilding or retooling or saying, okay, this isn't the year. We got to try and build it back up again. But that inevitably happens because you lose players like Tyron Smith is gone, Zack Martin talking about retirement, as you mentioned, and players make moves. So you do have a window that's opening and closing, and this one seems to be closing on Dallas, and they've been a real head scratcher this year, Mike, for Dak. I mean, Dak just play. I mean, we have seen so many players bet on themselves and win. And I'm sure, obviously, there are some that have done that and lost, but we have seen guys bet on themselves and win and get paid huge amounts of money. Dak could be in line for just that by being a true free agent at the end of this year, unless Jerry Jones steps up with an extension, which, oh, by the way, would also help your salary cap, because right now he's going to cost $50+ million against the cap this year.
I mean, the last 3 seasons that Dak's finished every game in 2022 and 2020, both cut short. The last 3 seasons where he's played all 16 or then 17 games, he's thrown for over 4,400 yards and usually up over 30 touchdowns. The guy is about as steady as anyone there, and that's through multiple coordinators. Now, the change this last year, where him and Mike McCarthy both looked really good at the helm of this offense for the majority of the season. I struggle. You're right, Dad. As all of this changes on the horizon, why you wouldn't plant your flag in Dak Prescott at this point in time and have him be the one to help move you forward there. But instead now you get coach and quarterback both walking into this season with a massive bullseye on their back. I would say, Dad, I guess the only team that probably would feel the heat more than them would be the New York Jets. Like, I don't think Aaron Rodgers was wrong in his assessment that if he goes out there and lays an egg, they're probably all getting fired, and that team really has mortgaged their future on one. But it really does feel like that for both of them, because if Dak Prescott leaves in Dallas all of a sudden, I don't know what the heir apparent there looks like.
Well, I'm going to tell you what we are going to hear a lot of if Dak does not get an extension. we're going to get a lot of Jerry Jones pressers telling us how good Trey Lance looks. Boy, does Trey look good in practice.
Oh, yeah.
And Trey's going to get a lot of work in the preseason, so we'll see for ourselves. But, oh, boy, in practice, does he look good. He is going to be talking up Trey Lance without question if this extension doesn't get done.
Oh, yeah, you can book that right now. If you want someone to make this easy, coherent, and something that Cowboys fans can get behind, Jerry's not your guy. But if you want a mess that's built for reality television, my oh my, Jerry's going to have you guys locked and loaded and ready for the next episode here very, very soon. So again, you and I both talked about this till we're blue in the face. You should have reworked with this with Dak a long time ago, made that the easy starting point for your financial planning for CeeDee Lamb, for Micah Parsons. But Dallas likes to cram at the last minute and get all this done by deadlines and usually make it messier in the process here. Something else I thought was interesting yesterday, Dad, we've heard a lot of conversation about the NFL offseason program potentially changing in response to the NFL's desire for an 18th game. I don't feel like we had really heard all that much from active players about it until yesterday when Colts NFLPA rep and star center Ryan Kelly got in front of the microphone and was asked about the 18-game season on the Pat McAfee show and had this to say.
If people understood how hard it was to play 16, then they took another one, right? And it's like, they get rid of preseason games. Well, okay, who's that going to hurt, right? The guys that don't have the shot, the guys that are the undrafted guys or late round guys that need to go out there and improve themselves, right? It's not, and I think that the fans see it as like they don't watch the preseason games. Well, they have no idea what goes on inside the building, right? So, 18 games sounds great when Roger's saying it on Pat McAfee podcast, but until you're the one going out there and putting the helmet on for 18 of those games, then come talk to me.
My apologies. That was at the Colts press conference. He referenced Roger Goodell's appearance on the Pat McAfee show. So, Dad, you're someone that talks a lot about the fact that when these games change, the players also get paid off of this too. But what do you say to Ryan Kelly, who's pointing out yet again what we've heard time and time again, that this wear and tear on the player's body at some point is going to add up to too much?
So first, I agree with him because you were in that position as an undrafted free agent. And when they changed, now you have less preseason games and you cannot have two padded practices together. So a lot of times, the first and second teamers are going to get the reps and pads, and then there's no pads the next practice. It's tough for late round or undrafted guys to really show their wear. So I do agree with that. That's something I don't think fans care as much about, but certainly Ryan Kelly does, as he said it. I certainly do as a player, is exactly what goes on inside the building. As far as the extra games, so I know there's a lot of players that don't like it. The vote barely passed, I think, last time to go to 17 games. I know there are some players that don't like it, and some players will complain about it to use it for leverage because to give to get, that's what this is. Okay, we're going to begrudgingly go to 18 games, which I think it will. What are we getting in return? And then that's what negotiation is. The next CBA isn't up till 2030, but you can amend it before that if both parties will work together, so you can do that. One of the things talked about is getting rid of the off-season program, when the players have to get back together in March or April through May and then June mini camps, and then you get a little bit of a break before training camps start, and basically say, hey, we're professionals, we'll train on our own, which I understand that part of it. You are a pro. It's up to you to prepare and be ready for the season, okay? I get that. Coaches would hate it because coaches always want the players under their thumb and in the building so they can see them. But from a professional athlete standpoint, get yourself ready to play. That's your job. The part of it, Mike, though, that concerns me is when you're not at a facility in May or April and May and June and you're training on your own and you get hurt training, because it's going to happen. If you get hurt training in the facility, you still get paid. If you are training on your own and you get hurt, you cannot get paid. The team cannot pay you. So what gets worked out there to me is important, because that is going to happen if you don't have OTAs and players are training hard on their own. Some are going to get hurt, and what happens to them then, I would like to know.
Yeah, I would imagine if this change ends up getting ratified, it's probably going to alter how contracts get done to that point.
You would hope.
And the language in there surrounding that to continue to protect the players as this landscape keeps on changing. Coming up next, Charlotte Wilder is going to join us to discuss the ever-changing landscape of college sports and the professional leagues. And, oh yeah, that little thing called the NBA Finals that starts tonight. back to hour number 2 of GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Charlotte Wilder from Oddball, her and Amin El Hassan going to join us here in just a couple of minutes as she's out in Boston getting ready for game 1 of the NBA Finals coming up tonight here, Dad, and we're certainly going to break down all of that. I'm sure the buzz around town in Boston is incredible, maybe a twinge of anxiety for all the reasons that we know about what's gone on with this program over recent years with the core of this team. But before we got to that, I wanted to revisit the news of the day, the report from Adrian Wojnarowski that Danny Hurley, the UConn head basketball coach, the back-to-back defending champion UConn Huskies on the men's side, had now been the coach that the Lakers were zeroing in on as their top candidate for the head coaching job here. And I believe we have sound of Adrian Wojnarowski talking about this on Uninterrupted, good Lord, Unsportsmanlike, the ESPN radio morning show that we can take a listen to here.
The Lakers over the next few days are in a full court press to convince Dan Hurley to come to LA. He has told them that he wants to hear them out. And I think the Lakers, Rob Pelinka, they want to put a program in place in LA. They don't want to just have coach to coach. They want to put a program in for the long term. They want Dan Hurley's player development program. The NBA is changing. You can't in LA anymore just trade 3 or 4 first-round picks to bring in a star player and think you can have a roster that can win. That is how they got Anthony Davis. But you are seeing you have to draft well. You have to develop your young players. And in LA, I think the belief is always you're going to be able to get the star player who, finds his way to LA, but you're going to have to grow your young players.
So that, again, ESPN NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski on ESPN's Unsportsmanlike morning show. And Charlotte Wilder's joining us now here. Charlotte, we got to react to this right off the top of the show. But as you hear that right now, the Lakers, by no means a done deal, but now getting ready to roll out the red carpet in Hollywood for Danny Hurley, a day after we just did all the JJ Redick news. Are you enjoying the whiplash like everybody else?
Yeah, are you kidding me? This is the good stuff, guys. First of all, hello. I'm so happy to be with you here from these beautiful studios. I will say, I feel like this is the official Lakers Coach Watch show because the way you guys asked JJ yesterday, I meant to text you and then I forgot because that's who I am. But I was like, when Golic Senior, when you said, we're always here, and then GoJo, you were like, I know you've got some places you could break the news, but also the way he answered, I was like, well, that feels like obviously a yes. And then I was like, wait, is that obviously a no? And then the Danny Hurley stuff comes out. I'm honestly surprised we haven't heard Danny Hurley's name before connected to the Lakers. I don't think we have. It's hard to keep track of all this, but don't you guys feel like he's the hottest commodity? I mean, that guy lives and breathes coach. Like that man's first name is Coach Danny Hurley, and he was born that way.
Well, I mean that family is, right? I mean, it's a coach family.
Yeah.
And I think we all got lost in the JJ Redick sauce, right? Because you just started putting the pieces together. JJ Redick, well, wait a minute. The guy's basketball IQ is unbelievable. He's talked about being a coach. He's been interviewed for being a coach. Oh, he does a podcast with LeBron. So we thought, end of story, that's going to be it. That's going to be the road they go down. And then Woj, not caring at all that game 1 is tonight, just dropped the bomb and walked away saying, yeah, Danny Hurley. Guys, I don't know. Maybe it's just the pettiness in me. I would be so excited just to hear what their offer is, because all you hear is going to be a massive offer. You wonder in the Hurley household if they're making guesses as to what the amount, because he's not going to say anything publicly, right? But privately, I mean, you got to be going, damn, man, they're going to give me a hell of a lot of money to do this.
Well, what's so interesting to me is when the Kentucky job opened up, and it was right before it was the day of the national championship. I mean, these things keep dropping at very, at slow news days, so to speak. And Hurley was like, yeah, are you kidding me? Like, my wife and I just got closer to New Jersey, where they're both from. He's like, there's no way I'm taking this. I feel like, does everybody have a number? Danny Hurley is one guy who, if you told me, no, Danny Hurley doesn't have a number and he wants to keep coaching at UConn forever, I would be like, also I could see that. I also think that in terms of JJ, it's been so fascinating to me because I wonder what the dynamic of being, I think he and LeBron are friends, but at least certainly co-workers on that same level, to then go into that environment and all of a sudden JJ is nominally in charge. And I think if anyone can do it, it's JJ. Like, I really do think that he would be a phenomenal coach. I think he has a better chance than most people of wrangling that situation. But I could see the Lakers sort of looking around at all this noise and being like, wait a second, do we just need like a straight up coach who maybe doesn't have that relationship with LeBron? I don't know. GoJo, what is your read on the whole thing?
I think my read is I don't know when this became available to them or when this idea popped into their head. Now, Adrian Wojnarowski's report says that he's been the one that they wanted since the beginning of this process, but everything we've heard publicly, to your point, has been about JJ Redick. And so I think when it comes down to it, Danny Hurley is one of the best basketball coaches, period, right now, but certainly at the college level, he's been someone whose game and the way he's structured that team looks a lot more NBA than most of his college counterparts. And Dad, having a ready-made product as opposed to someone who is going to learn on the job how to coach, I think is always appealing to a lot of programs. And while they talked about, we heard Woj mention, they want to start a program, the Lakers also want to win right now. You're at the tail end of one of the greatest careers in NBA history in LeBron James, in a town and in an organization that loves to treat their stars the right way and is built off the backs of big, all-time great, gaudy names. And so Danny Hurley also does give you the ability to come in and win right now, because he's someone who, and I remember we went through this with when I went through the coaching change at Notre Dame. Charlie Weiss had come over from the New England Patriots and taken the Notre Dame head coaching job and was learning how to be a head coach on the job, was doing all of those things there. And people always ask when Brian Kelly came in, better, worse, different. It was never better or worse. It was anything. It was different. And you could tell certain areas where, hey, Brian Kelly had been a head coach before. He knew certain things and how he wanted them done because he had them done at the process at a bunch of different spots along the way, even if this was a massive step up in scope. And make no mistake, Danny Hurley going to the freaking Lakers would be a massive step up in scope, in the way the program is covered, everything around it, having arguably the greatest player in the history of the sport as the star on your team. All those things, but in pure nuts and bolts of head coaching, he would know how to structure almost everything inside that building that you wouldn't have to worry about, in the same way that JJ, even as capable as we think he is, would ultimately still be learning on the job with these high stakes around him.
I think they both would have a plan, but Danny Hurley has already been able to put his plan into action, where JJ's plan has not had practical application yet. But I think will in time somewhere, if not in LA. I think the interesting thing as well, Charlotte, is we heard LeBron say, listen, pick a coach. I don't want to be involved. Yet the two names we hear, JJ Redick, I do believe he's friends with. He's doing a friggin' podcast with. And the other is Danny Hurley, that when Danny Hurley was on with JJ Redick, unsolicited, LeBron throws in a tweet talking about how much he loves Danny Hurley, the way he coaches. So to think that there's no input at all by LeBron, or there's not something there, I think is a bit foolish.
Isn't that the most LeBron thing of all time, to be like, oh no, but please continue. I have absolutely, I am a mere humble player, King James. He literally, like, that's his name. That's what he calls himself. I mean, at least I think he came. I don't know. Whatever. Saying LeBron is not involved in the Lakers head coaching search, to me, is like saying that I had nothing to do with what I'm wearing today as someone who does not have a stylist. Like, that's so. And look, also, that is reckless speculation, perhaps, on my part. But what else are we doing if not speculating? Because I don't know LeBron. But I mean, you're the most powerful NBA player currently playing, and perhaps ever. And I mean, honestly, it would be silly not to be involved. Like, if I were on a show and they were like, hey, we're going to bring in this producer, I'd be like, could I meet him? And I'm Charlotte Wilder. He's LeBron James. Like, it seems a little bit like they're asking us to suspend a lot of belief there, I think.
Yeah, I think we can deal honestly with this, right? That Danny Hurley and hiring him can serve two masters. It can feel like more of this long-term build. You can sell that as a part of it, especially when you're pumping up a guy coming from the college ranks. And also, yes, it is absolutely not going to come without the stamp of LeBron James. I think one of the other things before we turn the page, and I promise we'll get to the NBA Finals that Charlotte's here in town to cover. The other thing I saw that was interesting, Charlotte, Paul Hembekides, great researcher over at ESPN, guy that we know super well, tweeted out Jim Harbaugh and Danny Hurley, fresh off national titles, jetting to the pros within months of each other, is a sad commentary on the state of college athletics. And Dad, I completely disagree with this. It is a commentary, and we've heard in the reporting around this story that the changing landscape of college sports is certainly a factor. Again, the same way it was for the college football coaches that left, for the guys that are good enough to have options, who look at the pro level as right now a more regulated, fully formed version of something college sports are similarly becoming. But in the Geese cases here, Jim Harbaugh was a guy that had an NFL past and was staring down probably very likely sanctions coming off of the sign stealing scandal from this last fall. And with Danny Hurley, it's the freaking Lakers. Like, it's one of the handful of jobs that anybody in their right mind, if offered, would stand up, consider, and then take if they had the chance to do it. So while college sports are absolutely changing, I don't feel like we need to make everything the referendum on it in the way that Hembo wants to here.
Completely agree. I do not put that referendum on this at all. Is it a little more? It might be. It might be why some we see, as we talked about with Saban, older coaches leaving the game. But these two guys, if Hurley goes to the Lakers, aren't the first or the last to go from college to the pros. And so many went before NIL and before the transfer portal. We've seen this happen before. But it's the chosen few who have the options. That's never going to change. The landscape of college sports has changed. But what hasn't changed is the top coaches. And, oh, by the way, Harbaugh was in the pros already. It's not like he's a newbie to the NFL. So, yeah, I disagree with that as well. I think it's an easy narrative to say, oh, the landscape changed. Look at these guys jumping out or getting out. Now, could that happen to some? Possibly, who want to make a change. But for those like Harbaugh and Hurley, Charlotte, who have choices, to me, it's same story, different year.
Yeah, I mean, I also feel with coaches and athletes at any high level, you're so competitive that when you conquer a certain level, well, what's next? Like, you can either take the Saban route where it's like, I'm going to just do this as many times as I can, or, you know, I think Harbaugh probably, a lot of these guys, and women, it's like, okay, well, what else can I do? And I think that competitiveness can't really be overstated. I do think, though, you know, it also depends, like, where they are in their lives and what they want. I think, Gojo, you're right that the Lakers, like, how do you say I was offered the Lakers job with LeBron and turned it down, even though I do think that there's an enormous amount of pressure there, and I think something we're a little bit overlooking in this whole conversation, I don't think the Lakers have a roster right now that can win them a championship. I just don't. I don't know what moves they could make given the pieces they have to play with that could give them that possibility, and I feel like that is the expectation in hiring a new coach in one of LeBron's last years of playing relative to the rest of his career. So I could see someone be like, this feels like a cliff that I'm going to get pushed off unfairly, which I do think it's important to keep in mind. But again, I think so many of these people are so competitive that if you're like, here, do you want a chance to do the impossible? They're like, yes. How else could I have been in this profession for so long if I don't believe that I can do the impossible? So I don't think it has much to do with college sports as it does with competitiveness in general.
Yeah, and Danny Hurley knows that if it doesn't work out in the NBA, any college team in their right mind would bend over backwards to welcome him back into their building. And yeah, Dan, I guess the thing I quibble with is sad commentary on the state of collegiate athletics. Like, collegiate athletics are changing, and the priorities are changing in ways that we believe are worthwhile and a long time coming. And again, if you think what happens now is bad, it's not a commentary on the current state of it. It's a commentary on the former state of it that we allowed to exist for so long in a way that clearly was not sustainable.
There is no sad commentary now. It's different commentary. Players are now getting treated like ones that are helping to bring in billions of dollars and getting a piece of it. Coaches can still move around like they're allowed to move around. Money is flowing into the sport thanks to the players and the coaches and the institutions. And everybody's kind of getting a piece of that now. It's just figuring out the right way to give everybody a piece of that has it kind of in flux right now. But yeah, to me, it's not a sad commentary. And I go back to what I said as soon as NIL was first talked about, my God, it's going to ruin college sports. I said, no, it's not. People are still going to flock to stadiums and they're still going to watch. It's still their alma mater. Ratings are still great. And oh, by the way, look at all the new TV deals that are going out. It is a lucrative business and always will be.
Yeah, and business is the operative term here, so let's always keep that at the forefront of the conversation. So we'll have plenty more time, I'm sure, to shake down the headlines of this as all the ramifications and fallouts are going to be out here. But Charlotte Wilder, you are in our DraftKings studio in Boston right now because game one of the finals is getting set tonight. You, Amin El-Hassan, Oddball, phenomenal podcast every day but Monday here on the DraftKings Network. So what's the buzz in the city right now? How's it feel to be back home and to be getting ready for this game finally after what's felt like a long hiatus?
I mean, I'll be honest, the coming back to Boston for big games like this, which I've been lucky enough to do as a fan and as a reporter or whatever it is that I am, it makes me emotional. I was on the train up yesterday thinking about it, and you know, I've said this before, but the place that I had my first internship out of college, where I was like, I'm trying to be a writer and sending all these emails to people being like, how do I do this, was down the street from TD Garden. And so whenever I go by, it's personally very moving to me because I don't know that. There were times when I was like, I'm never going to get where I want to go. And so that's really nice personally. But from a Celtics perspective, I mean, my Uber driver this morning was like, first of all, he played for the Greek national team and played at BC and I don't think thought that I knew anything about basketball and was explaining to me why the Celtics were going to win in 5. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I think the buzz so far, you know, I've been here for maybe 12 hours. It seems pretty good. The buzz seems pretty good. I'm so excited to get into that building. Like the feeling of the finals is one of my favorite big events in sports. Probably my favorite. Also, I love that it's in June because the days are longest and I'm happiest. Maybe that has something to do with it. But no, I mean, it feels big here in a way that, you know, I think a lot of fans are probably relieved and also terrified.
So
I think that's probably the right mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of fans, do you expect the reaction to Kyrie Irving to be booed at introduction or booed every time he touches the ball or somewhere in between?
Maybe the entire game. Maybe even when the Celtics have the ball, fans will be booing Kyrie Irving. I honestly do not think we will have seen anything like this in his reception to being back in Boston. I think it's going to be series long. And I think that it will probably fuel him and he will probably have career high games because of it.
I was going to say, after all this time, you think the animosity is still that high? Because it has been a few years now.
Beyond, like higher than I think anybody is talking about it.
Wow.
I think people underestimate the ability of New Englanders and Boston people to hold a grudge. Like this is championship level grudge holding territory and stubbornness and you know, it feels like a personal affront if a player does not treat the teams in Boston with the reverence that the fans do. I really think that this is going to be louder boos than we have heard, and I just really, really hope it keeps to that and does not get uglier because that would embarrass me as someone who is from here very, very greatly.
And Charlotte, real quickly, I think on the other side of that, I don't think you're going to get a lot from Kyrie. I don't think you're going to get I'm scratching the back of my head, but really flipping you off. He seems to really have found himself in a really good place mentally and physically now.
Yes. I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I agree. I think he's not going to give us. I don't think he's going to give the public much when it comes to a response to how Boston responds to him, GoJo.
All right. Well, you know what? Charlotte's got a lot of thoughts on that. Let's get to those next because coming up as we look towards the finals and we will give you our picks, we'll get all that coming up. But we're going to play a little fact or fantasy for the NBA Finals with our buddy Charlotte Wilder coming up next here on GoJo and Golic. right, we're back here with Charlotte Wilder for a Charlotte Wilder Wednesday on a Tuesday that's now on a Thursday this week. Days are hard. We're making through it as best we can.
We're trying to get all of them eventually. Charlotte, it'll be like Wilder Wednesdays on a Tuesday and Thursday, but Monday, but it's actually Friday.
Yeah, this is like Charlotte Wilder's version of being an offensive lineman that's played all 5 positions on the offensive line. When she finally hits, I don't know if it's Monday or Friday that's left, but when she finally hits it, it's going to be like Thanos putting that final Infinity Stone in the gauntlet. And Charlotte will ascend to heights with all of her power here. But we're going to try and weaponize Charlotte's power for good right now and play a little facts or fantasy heading into the NBA Finals here, trying to figure out, are these actual real issues for the NBA Finals, or are these just sports talk radio topics that we're all barfing out here because we've had way too much time between the Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals and the NBA Finals here now. So, Charlotte, I want to start with you on this one. This was kind of something that we touched on in the last segment here, but I know you said you had some more about the growth of Kyrie Irving, because question number one was, is Kyrie Irving actually public enemy number 1 for Boston sports fans in all of sports right now? And would you say that's the case, that he is probably the most hated person in Boston outside of the city?
Yeah. Like, I can't think of another athlete who would even come close. I think the disappointment in the Kyrie Gordon Hayward experiment, obviously Hayward shattered his leg, and that was such a turning point moment for the franchise. That's probably why Tatum and Brown were kept together, because that didn't work. I think that the animosity towards Kyrie saying he would re-sign if you'll have me, and then not, and then obviously the scuffing the logo and saging the garden when he came back. And I think that what's so fascinating to me about Kyrie right now, guys, is that I have been surprised that I've been sympathetic to him. Obviously, there's the on-court stuff and the basketball stuff. There's also the conspiracy theory stuff and tweeting out, dangerous things. And I guess maybe I'm just tired as a person, but I have really enjoyed seeing him pull it together. I've liked seeing his growth as a leader on the court. I think it's pretty impressive how he's gone from being such an instigator to not saying bad things and being talking about how emotional he is and being honest about his growth. I also saw a tweet that was like, everyone's acting as though, Kyrie overcame cancer and he was just an a-hole for 5 years. So I don't think you can ignore the fact that he did this to himself. Like, all of these things he did.
Yeah, Kyrie's not going to win comeback player of the year off this.
No, all of these things he did were his mistakes, but I think it is so rare to see somebody these days start to go down the kind of road that Kyrie went down and then pull it back instead of spiraling further into those more dangerous
Aaron
places.
Rodgers.
And I also just I think that it's been fun to see him as a leader on that team. I think it's been fun to see him genuinely appear to want this. And I have to be honest, part of me thinks like maybe the reason that Kyrie has been being so positive and uncontroversial is because that was actually the most controversial thing he could do. Like, he's such a contrarian that maybe he goes to Dallas and everyone's like, oh, it's never going to work. And he's going to keep running his mouth. And he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be an exceptional leader. And I'm not going to say anything except to talk about basketball and how much I love this game. So maybe there's a little bit of contrariness in that as it is.
I'm not going to lie. I'm surprised. I thought it would have been any all-time great Yankee that would have been the most hated by Boston fans.
Not right now. Not right now. Maybe.
Yeah, not right now.
At one point, that they're up there for sure, senior.
Yeah, no, Boston's still trying to figure it out on the baseball front there right now. But I'm with you, Charlotte. It's been a nice about face, and I think it should be clear, Kyrie might still believe all of those things that he was saying, but he hasn't said them publicly in a while, and he's decided to put basketball first in a way that, again, we never want to be the people telling anyone to shut up and dribble, but it has been refreshing to see Kyrie's gifts on display again, and that be the story and not the rest of these things here. Dad, let's get to the second factor fantasy here. Kristaps Porzingis is the make or break factor for Boston in this entire series.
I mean, listen, they've got there without him, but this is going to be the most complete team they play because there's no injury to a major star on this team. To me, it's the most intriguing factor for sure on how he plays on the rim, how he plays and brings the defense out away from the rim, how he reacts to his injury. So I'll say, yeah. I mean, I would probably switch the word make it or break it with intriguing because I am really intrigued at how he is going to add to a team that has played pretty damn well, albeit against inferior opponents with stars that have been out, but how you throw him, Charlotte, into this rotation.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw Stephen A. say the Celtics will not win without Porzingis, and I don't think that's true. I think that I think obviously everyone's talked about the matchups between, him and Gafford, him and Derek Lively, and how he can stretch the floor and how he shoots three, blah, blah, blah. We've heard this for a week now. We get it. Also, though, who knows what his conditioning is like? I think that a lot of people are putting way too much weight in how, quote, easy the Celtics cakewalk to the finals was, and now that they're facing a real opponent, they need Kristaps Porzingis, and it's like, well, I don't know. Pacers played pretty well. Sure, Tyrese got hurt. Sure, Donovan Mitchell was hurt in the Cavs series. Yes, Jimmy Butler was hurt. I get it. We all get it. But I think that is saying that one player is the reason that a historically dominant team, that they can't win without him. I just think that's silly. I think any team can win without anyone in any way, and it shocks you. Like, the Heat got to the finals last year. So, I don't know. I think that's a tired narrative.
They did. You know what? We can get to that. We will make our picks coming up here in the next segment. Now, we'll be fascinated because I actually do think Kristaps can kind of be a swing state in this series. And I don't think that's all that far-fetched in a series that is as close with some of the star players involved as this one has the potential be. But I want to focus on one of the stars for this last one, Charlotte. Jason Tatum doesn't have enough Mamba in him to win the title. Is this fact or is this fantasy?
I mean, what? I don't know.
For anyone that doesn't get this, Jason Tatum is he's a Kobe system guy. He's one of the guys that grew up lionizing Kobe Bryant, wanted to model a lot of what he did after him. And while I think there's a lot about his game that really doesn't have any resemblance to Kobe Bryant at all, or the way his approach, he's still been one of the best players in the sport, Charlotte. But is the clutch time stuff, is that part of those things in the critical moments of the game where he's been scrutinized, is that a big enough factor for you to worry in this series?
Not single-handedly having it come down to Jason Tatum. Like, I think what was in the first Pacers game where he missed a bunch of shots, had a horrible turnover in the fourth quarter, and then Jaylen Brown hits that three. I feel like the team around him, you could say he hasn't been clutch, but the team has been clutch, and he has contributed many, many points to that team. Maybe not in the, last 2 minutes of every game, but I think that you don't know until it happens. And that's like the worst sports talk answer I could give you. That's like me. That's like malpractice for me to say this.
I mean, Charlotte, the last time we got to this stage with Jason Tatum, he was terrible by his standards and by most star standards, including Dad in the closeout game for the Boston Celtics in the 2022 finals for them. So we have seen him crap the bed.
We have, but I Kobe Bryant was an anomaly, right, with what he did. To sit there and say, does he have Mamba in him? People said LeBron doesn't have that in him. Hell, look at a guy who won a couple of Super Bowls, not the screaming leader, the Mamba type. Eli Manning is about as mild-mannered as could be. And, he's a 2-time Super Bowl winner. Joker's worried more about his horses than basketball, it seems. So I think that is so overplayed. I don't think it matters your personality is, can you get it done when it's time to get it done? He didn't last time. He'll have another chance now, but I don't think there is one blinders on type of mentality that you have to win the title.
Eli was a rip in the Matrix.
I would say, you really, on Charlotte's day in the lead up to this game, you choose to walk into her city
and
bring up those games in particular. How dare you, Dad? Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We want to make sure we put you on game to the other great shows here at the DraftKings Network. And if you're ready to dive into more of the world of women's sports like never before, jaw-dropping plays, laugh-out-loud moments, well, get ready to meet your newest obsession on DKN, Good Follow. It's your all-access pass to the best in women's sports, culture, comedy, and lifestyle. Good Follow is not just a typical sports show. They're breaking barriers, sparking conversations, and celebrating the diverse voices that make women's sports so incredible. So whether you're a diehard fan or you're just looking for a good time, join host Megan Reyes for the lineup of incredible guests every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And be sure to follow along at Good Follow Show on Twitter as well. And Charlotte, Lord knows there's been plenty to talk about there here. It's been a busy week in the W, I would say here. Have you enjoyed all the chaos surrounding this sport this week?
I don't know. We've jumped the shark in the sports media discourse. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely insane. A man showed up to harass Kennedy Carter. Sorry. I start out so strong there. A man showed up to harass Kennedy Carter at the team hotel that the Chicago Sky were staying at last night. If that is not evidence that the way we talk about this stuff matters in ways that people cannot begin to comprehend, the way we talk about this league, the way we talk about the women in it, and the way that I think sports media this past week has failed those women actually has repercussions. And it's just, I'm at a point where I don't know. It's amazing that the W is getting this much attention. People have to be better and smarter about it.
What I know will save us in this conversation is Kate Martin. Because the one thing throughout the entire process here with all of this, because you're right, it was an unfortunate incident there with the Sky. We've seen them be at the center of this with the Kennedy Carter play with Caitlin Clark, the face that launched 1,000 ships in the entire bad discourse around all of this. But I will say, in just sitting around yesterday and watching Kate Martin birthday surprise videos from the Las Vegas Aces they put out, Dad, for all the conversation about vets and rookies not getting along and that coming into the league, Caitlin Martin might be the most beloved teammate in the W, because between how hard Caitlin Clark loved on her last year at Iowa, to the story of her on draft night, to now watching her getting just loved on by Asia Wilson and all these great vets for the Aces, the defending two-time WNBA champion Aces, warmed my cold, dead heart to see.
Oh, I listen, I think it was great. It was fantastic. But I think, Charlotte, this also goes to show when something becomes popular, there's good and bad, right? The Sky team isn't the first professional team that has had some guy outside with a camera harassing someone. It's happened before. It's going to happen again. I mean, they've become popular to where there is great stuff and there is bad stuff. And it's just something that I'm not saying it should happen, but it's very difficult to stop from happening. And there was a security guard that got in the way and didn't let anything escalate to a point. But I think that this becomes part and parcel of what happens when you become popular. In an odd way, for the WNBA, man, they are almost sitting on top of the world right now. But as I said, with that can come bad with good.
Yeah, obviously there are going to be growing pains when anything becomes as mainstream as the W is becoming as quickly. I do think, though, that this is a situation where you're talking about a league that is made up of mostly black women, and I think that the way there's a lot of subtext in the way that people can talk about this league because of that, in a way that can get uglier much more quickly, and that everybody has to be extra careful about is what I would say, I think. But the Kate Martin stuff, I mean, she's so delightful. And yeah, the vet rookie thing, Cameron Brink also, in this great Q&A that Megan Armstrong did yesterday, she talked about how important it is to use her privilege as a white feminine woman in this league to shine a light on people who are not like her. And she was like, the vet rookie stuff, like, what are we doing? You know, she was talking about her relationship with Diana Taurasi, and I just think there's so much to celebrate there, and so much great basketball to talk about that I'm excited to. Let's get things back on track, everybody. Let's just let's talk about the sports.
It's a good chance to level set, and you're right. Cam Brink has been a real breath of fresh air publicly in the way that she's spoken about a lot of this, understands the position that she's got there. She was a part of another really wholesome moment for the W and women's basketball yesterday as the 3-on-3 Olympic rosters. Dad, I'm sure you can appreciate this.
Yep.
The 3-on-3 women's basketball Olympic rosters got announced, and you saw videos of Haley Van Lith and Cameron Brink both getting that news, getting presented with their red, white, and blue Team USA jerseys, and just bursting into tears. And Dad, as the Olympic freak that you are, I'm sure that you can identify with the emotion that comes with getting that chance to represent your country the way that those two young women are getting ready to.
Couldn't even fathom it. I mean, it would be the ultimate for me. I'm an ultimate team sport guy, but then to represent as a team in the Olympics would just be incredible. And Charlotte, listen, overall, I'm with you. I mean, let's talk about sports and let's talk about basketball, but that's when we're talking to the media. Unfortunately, you can't say that to fans because there are a bunch of yahoos out there that are never going to change. There are always going to be idiots out there. So I get it from the media side of covering things a certain way, but unfortunately for the guys who meet a team with a camera phone, those people aren't going to change, unfortunately. They're going to be the idiots that they are.
Wait. Senior, are you telling me that sports fans aren't rational, well-adjusted people?
Wait a minute.
This is blowing my mind.
I just wanted to make that distinction when you were saying, hey, let's look at the basketball and talk basketball, to say, yes, from the media side, I hope they do that, but we can't expect that from the fans. No way. There are too many idiots out there.
Can't expect
no, but people can be coached up to an extent, I do believe. But you're right. There's always going to be some folks that go rogue. Either way, check out Good Follow. It's going to be awesome every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. In the meantime, we need to give out picks right now. We've got the series getting ready to get started. We have done a bad job of this. And so, Charlotte, I see you grimacing, which means I'm going to go to Dad first and say, Dad, Celtics, Mavs, tips off tonight. Who you got and in how many games?
I'm going to be the contrarian here and go with the underdog. I'm going to go with Dallas in 6. I think they're going to win it at home in Game 6. I know Porzingis is back. I do think that Boston is the better team, and normally, obviously, that's why you have a series, that the better team wins in a series. But, man, I just think there's something about hitting your stride, and I think Dallas is hitting it. Not only with Luka and with Kyrie, but with their role players as well, all playing their parts extremely well. So I'm going to go Dallas. Sorry, Charlotte. I'm going to go Dallas in 6.
Shallot is what I had a friend with a very thick Boston accent growing up, and she called me Shallot, and it sounds like the little onion. So I have avoided doing this so far, to be honest. I think when the team that you are a fan of is involved, it is always awful to make picks. I'm going to say Celtics in 7. I'm gonna imagine the most possible torturous and then euphoric situation for me as a fan, but I actually do think that is a possibility. To be honest, I really think that this is anyone's series. I'm so excited about this because of how evenly matched these teams are, and because of how I think that they both can be the kryptonite to each other that we just have not seen yet in terms of both of them through the playoffs. GoJo.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do think this has a chance, both Boston getting healthy and facing the healthiest team that they've had during this entire postseason run. I think those things are going to kind of level set a little bit there. I think for me, Dad said Dallas in 6. I think I'm going to go Dallas in 7. I think the more I came back to it, it's just the best player of the series plays for the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, Kristaps coming back. To me, that is a huge differentiator in the series. I think if they get full-strength Kristaps, or anything close to that, whatever you get this late in the season, I'm going to be eating my words pretty hard. But I think on the other side of that, we've talked a lot about Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, the Celtics have some demons they need to slay on this stage of basketball. Kyrie Irving has banner all-time NBA performances at the championship level of the sport, playing opposite one of the best players in the world. He's in an extremely comfortable position, and I've said at the end of the day, superstar players, your job is to make life easier on the role players on your team in the most critical moments of the game. And I don't know of two guys that do it better right now than Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. So me and Dad both picking the Mavs. Charlotte Wilder looking at us.
Well, no, the emotional roller coaster I'm about to go on just flashed before my eyes.
It is. Coming up next, the end of the show flashes before our eyes. right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern when you can. And if you miss us there, can't catch us live, you can always check us out noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, the best of GoJo and Golic, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. And if you got to miss that or any of our great guests, thank you to Shane O'Brien from Missing Curfew, who joined us to help preview the NHL Stanley Cup Final earlier in the show. And, of course, our buddy Charlotte Wilder, co-host of Oddball with Amin El Hassan, every day but Monday here on the DraftKings Network. She's going to be out here in Boston for the start of the finals here. Check them out. Download, subscribe, rate, and review them too. Get them wherever you get our podcast. And, of course, right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. Guys, let's start off with this. We were talking a little bit about some of the Olympic announcements before. And how about this? Former college basketball standout, NBA vet Chase Budinger, going to head to Paris next week to compete for the United States beach volleyball team. Dad, I now living out here in Southern California have an even greater appreciation than I already did for the insane level of athleticism it takes to compete in any form of volleyball, but especially beach volleyball with the uncertain footing behind these guys. So hell of a plot twist here, and someone I'd imagine you're very jealous of as someone that was a former collegiate football player and wrestler who could have had this kind of reality before you.
Listen, to train in the sand, we know how hard that is. These guys play their sport in the sand. It's incredible. But this just warms my heart, man. Basketball player turned volleyball player. They're the number 2 team. I think they're ranked 13th in the world. He and his partner, the number 2 in U.S. are the second team. But just to have that chance to represent is just one of the I can't. Listen, this is one of my favorite times of year. I'm watching all the trials that are going on. I think next week, I think it's the swimming trials go on. I love watching
swimming trials going on in Lucas Oil, the football field in Indianapolis. I just saw their mascot dive in. Charlotte, they filled the entire thing with the pool and all the stands in there. It's incredible.
What?
Yeah, the makeshift pool that they make for Olympic, it's unbelievable what they do. But just to watch these athletes who are working for every 4 years to get into this, and especially in the timed sports where hundredths of a second can cost you a spot on an Olympic team, is so dreadfully painful to watch. Yet the elation of those who make it, I just love it. And then they get to wear the red, white, and blue. It gives me chills to talk about. So this is one of my favorite times of year. So very happy for him, and best of luck to him as well.
For what it's worth, he grew up out in California here. He grew up in Encinitas. He went to La Costa Canyon High School and played volleyball there too. And according to NBC Sports, he is the only person to play in a regular season NBA game and Olympic beach volleyball. So an incredible, unique distinction for him there. Charlotte, is there any Olympic sport you would have wanted to play most if you had the opportunity?
I think something like archery. You know, so one of the lesser covered. I think it would be pretty cool to be like, yeah, I won a gold medal in archery, so back off, bucko. Also, though, we on Oddball, check it out today because we had a conversation with JJ Barea, who played with Chase, and he talked about playing volleyball with him, beach volleyball with him as well, and it was great. So.
Oh, there you go. Cool. Awesome little insight into the world of Olympic beach volleyball there. For my money, it would have been the biathlon, cross-country skiing and rifle shooting. Most post-apocalyptic preparation amongst most of the Olympic sports. Although archery, not far off there, too. You'd be ready for the world after the day after tomorrow. So great stuff there. Let's get to that. Guys, we spend a lot of time talking about Nikola Jokic loving stuff other than basketball. And as his offseason got started a little earlier than we all expected, we got yet another window into Jokic's interest outside of horse whitewater rafting now added to it. Here's some video of Luka out here like most other tourists at Jokic, the other Eastern European, out here enjoying some whitewater rafting. So, Charlotte, first off, whitewater rafting, yes or no for you in the activity list?
Oh, yeah, real fun. I loved it. I even did one of the rapids. I swam it one time where you get sucked under and then shot out. I was young. I don't think I would do that now. Really just a delight because it's fun. It's like, periods of calm and you're sitting there in the sun and it's beautiful, followed by real adrenaline rushes. And does he have a helmet on? I can't see because you look like a real dweeb in the helmet, but I think it's important.
I don't think any of them have a helmet on, but I tell you what,
Eastern Europeans, they're built different.
as something we all did when our family was in Colorado. That's one thing you do is you really listen to the person who is guiding you, right? When you're out there and you have really no idea what you're doing, you're going to listen to them when they say paddle one way or paddle off the right or paddle off the left. They're going to get after you.
It's some guy named Chad who's like, all right, we're going to slam a couple brewskis and then you're going to pull hard to the left, folks, hard to the left. When I say hard to the left and you're like, Chad, I would follow you into war.
The funniest part about that, Charlotte, is ours wasn't Chad, but our whitewater rafting guide was my buddy Ryan Hoff, who had played lacrosse at Notre Dame. So we had a reformed lax bro who was out here selling rafting trips, taking us through the rapids here, making sure that we had a good time. So shout out to Hoff, who also ended up being my teammate at ESPN for a while and is an awesome dude and was a great lacrosse player and was an excellent whitewater rafting guide, which is surely a fun time. And for Jokic, again, we know he has got the one thing we've learned about him, and I think we've level set a bit on this idea of, Jokic doesn't actually care about basketball and he just wants to go hang out with Horse and do all that stuff. But what we think we have established, and there he is now doing his real true greatest love, which Pablo Torre finds out they did the deep dive on the chariot horse racing that he loves too, and how much he does actually love. He has a robust social life away from the basketball court, and I think that is a beautiful thing that we can now fully celebrate.
Oh yeah, I envy his hobbies. I really do. I mean, it makes me want to spend more time doing the other things I love, but I don't know if I could do them as well as Jokic. It is one of those things.
You get asked a lot as an adult what hobbies you have when you go into certain things, and I never have good answers. Like, Jokic has a bunch of really good answers, legitimate hobbies. You're like, Dad, you wouldn't have a hobby you could give me.
No, I wouldn't. But I think in Jokic's case, he would say his job is horses and his hobby is the NBA.
Just start saying, fair point. Start saying I harness racing.
Yeah, I'd like that. I would not do that. No.
Well, I mean, it's the better version of racing because you don't have to deal with the up and down of the horse. You get a nice seat.
Oh, there's no doubt I would never end up in that seat. I'd end up somehow, some way. I'd end up on the ground.
I'd have to at least once go out there and try and get my gladiator on and be riding in that thing with the spear that I tried to throw at someone else. You got to live out the fantasy if you've got the opportunity. So, guys, let's finish up with the third. Speaking of fantasy becoming reality here, there's a new number 2 in town. Not in any sort of sports category here. But according to the folks over at Scripps News, while Coke is still the number 1 soft drink in the U.S. and Pepsi had always been a close second, according to data from the trade publication Beverage Digest, Dr. Pepper and Pepsi both had an 8.3% share of the market volume last year, with Dr. Pepper actually slightly ahead. So, Dad, Dr. Pepper taking over as the new number 2. Where does this fall for you in the world of soft drinks?
Monster fan of Dr. Pepper. Monster fan. And I don't see it in enough places, quite honestly. To me, when I go into fast food places, there's not enough fountain drink dispensers that have Dr. Pepper or Diet Dr. Pepper. I drink Diet Dr. Pepper, but either one. I love them both. And I don't think it's readily available enough, quite honestly, for how much I like it. But I'm very happy for them. To round it up, it is Coke at 19.2, Dr. Pepper, Pepsi. Then it's Sprite and then Diet Coke going down the list of most popular. But I'm a monster Dr. Pepper fan.
This feels like some college football bias, but I'll let you have it, Senior. I just want to say that as a lifelong reader of Beverage Digest, I'm really glad to see them having their moment in the sun. So shout out to the good doctor.
Shout out to the good doctor, indeed. Shout out to Fansville, which, as you referenced, the narrative universe that they've built out around that commercial, I think clearly working. If this is happening, I think we have to call this a win for the marketing execs who came up with Fansville. And quite honestly, I am grateful for each and every one of them and the insane, chaotic world that they have created that now includes guys like Caleb Williams that have made their way into it. So God love them. Shout out to Dr. Pepper for saving my ass hangover on Sundays. McAllister's Deli in South Bend, large fountain Diet Dr. Pepper brought me back to life in the way that really only Blue Powerade besides that can possibly do. Hopefully this show brought you back to life today, and if it did, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, as well as checking out Charlotte Wilder, Amin El Hassan, and Oddball. Thanks so much. Enjoy the finals tonight. We'll talk to you tomorrow.